Shalom, my name is Yehoshua ben Abraham. I'm making this video from Jerusalem. I'm a didactic scientist, the author of the trilogy Humanomics, comprised of two paradigms. Its central organizing principle is the receiver to give and the integration of labor the new economic paradigm. Jerusalem's Yehoshua message is the subject, and this is the equivalent of my keynote address to the RNC, the Republican National Convention. It goes as follows. You're requested to please listen closely. God has intervened in recent years in ending man's exile. This intervention collapsed the local reality globally, and although noticed by many in events, its meta-narrative has commonly escaped man's comprehensive cognitive faculties. It just simply has not been recognized and understood for what it is what I'm saying. White space. Nonetheless, it was the collapse of man's anthropologic, sociologic, and psychology of identity of mind. And in particular, its identity delusion that was man's exile. Full stop. And this is the man delusion. We've all heard of the God delusion. Richard Dawkins. If he were a little better scientist, he would have checked up and done some research and looked into and found out and learned about the man delusion before he started writing about the God delusion, and he may not have even written the book in the first place. Well, he'd be quite a bit, his bank account would be a little bit lower. Okay, so we have the man delusion. Okay. And this man delusion is mankind's exile. That was his model of mind, that was giving to receive. And this means I give, I get. It's ended despite man's continuing denials of its collapse. White space. And here's why you must listen further and even more closely. It's now replaced by Humanomics' new central organizing principle, receiver to give. In Hebrew, kabel b'shvilat, it means receiving the authentic you to give the authentic you. To who? To the authentic you. To your children, to your family, your community, and your nation. Its importance is that it affects this collapse of the low rate that's ended man's exile. It affects every human being on the planet. What Freud called the, quote, id, ego, and superego, end quote, access, including all its many errors of man's identity and delusions of mind, in its will to power. And this was Nietzsche's work. Also was man's exile, and it too is gone. Collapse finished. White space. And what does this mean to you and to your family? What it means is it compels our awakening to now learn that we've not sought to identify and genuinely know the authentic self within each one of us. None of us has, while wrongly believing that we found in the only one we know, love, and trust, we believe to be the one we've all thought we can believe in, that this was our real self, and it absolutely is not our authentic self. Okay. White space. I'm going to turn off this noise here. As in the one in whom we all placed our complete faith and trust and continue to believe we can rely on. This one is an imposter, a mere fake. And this is now confirmed to have been and is the egregious error common to all mankind. One that we absolutely cannot continue to accept, full stop. Einstein's definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing over and over and over again while expecting a different result. And this is what we continue to do in exile. It must end. White space. Needed now to end man's recursive self-exile. In all of us is a theory of diffidence, quote unquote, meaning a healthy distrust of one's identity of exile, as is collapse. In the afore context, the dialogic means you're to, quote, honor him/her. But suspect him/her, quote unquote. And we're talking about none other than you. So therefore, This means get heaven's mirror, white space. Herein, in this context, the author urgently bids you take heed and search in earnest and seek comprehensively the authentic you, who's only found with God's help and is the one waiting within, waiting to be existentially confirmed to be the authentic you, and who is the one we can and must now discover only when we awaken, atone, make restoration to our authentic self, and then we can heal from the ravages of exile. To the one who is within, who is who you really are. And I'll repeat that again, to the one who is within, who is who you really are. As was hidden and oppressed since your birth, white space. This is the one who's been cut off from life and identity, who is the authentic you. This was/is the genetic behavioral program of man and mankind's exile. It was man's mind and identity that was the man delusion. Even well-qualified scientists are consistently deceived. White space. How do we understand this? In man's mind of exile's duality, its good and evil inclinations were man's natural duality. I'm keeping an eye on the clock. The evil manifestation, that is the superego, created its own imitation of man's duality, which was its own duality, as an object reference artifact of mind that is its own id-ego access duality, to substitute, impersonate, and supplant our authentic self's duality. And this is what defines man's exile. It's appropriate to note I'm using the descriptions and labeling them consistent with the theories of Freud, which have now been surpassed, so that we maintain the perceptions and the dialogic, and we go on, and we'll use it really as scaffolding for the new building. Herein, the superego is the authentic evil inclination revealed in its naked will to power, and that's where I will end, and we will pick up there in the next video. I'm Yehoshua Yaakov Ben Abraham. I'm a didactic scientist, the author of the trilogy Humanomics and its two paradigms, its central organizing principle, the new cognitive behavioral science which we receive to give, and the new economic paradigm, the integration of labor, which is the macro solution to the U.S. for transforming the U.S. economy, bringing the Virginia model and the benefits of the Virginia model to all the states of the United States, and as well to America's future strategic D9 partners in its development and implementation and acculturation. Thank you for listening.